But the combination of all three of these is really the sweet spot. You get a bike, whatever it is, carbon, aluminum, and you go down that list in that order, you have just upgraded your bike into a beast. And so, just like I said, I think you guys should do, I also did the same thing. So, there's my top 3 things in order that I think you should do to upgrade your mountain bike. All right, we're gonna talk about the first 3 things you should upgrade on your mountain bike. Number 1 is absolutely got to be tires. Most people, I think a vast majority of guys who buy their first bike, second bike, they get really used to riding the tires that come stock on their bike. And with some exceptions, most of the time, the tires that you're gonna get on your bike are absolutely not ideal. They're gonna be a really hard rubber compound, which gives you not very much grip. They're gonna be a very light casing, thin rubber in the sidewall, mostly, which is gonna give you lots of pinch flats while you're trying to learn how to even like ride a damn bike, which makes things really frustrating when you're like flatting and you don't even know how to fix a flat hardly. If more people, when they bought their first mountain bike, switched out their tires for something softer and thicker, I think we would have a lot more people mountain biking. Because I think every year we lose a lot of mountain bikers because it's too frustrating, or they keep flatting and they can't figure it out. Maybe they don't even know what tubeless tires are. They're still running tubes. And they're light casing tires. And that's gonna make you flat all the time. Unless you run really high tire pressures, which then makes mountain biking feel ultra sketchy. Because you got people that can't find grip because they're on hard rubber and they got it pumped up to like 35 plus PSI. Traction is so tough to find in that kind of a setup. So I really don't blame people if that's all they know. Oh yeah. I don't blame people if that's all they know. Don't blame them for thinking that mountain biking sucks. All right. So number 1, tires. Number 2, now this one might be a little debatable, but hear me out. I think number 2 should be brakes. Not suspension, not drivetrain, but brakes. And I'm not talking about just the brake pads, I'm talking about the brakes themselves. Unless you ripped into a really nice upper tier bike. And also this argument is holds a little bit less weight these days when the SRAM Mavens are getting spec'd on a lot of bikes now, but for the longest time, it was the SRAM codes. And those brakes, and before that was the guides. And both of those brakes have been notoriously underpowered. Oh, and really just bad brakes, bad power, lots of effort that needs to be put in to get those brakes to grab, which is never a good feeling. You're trying to figure out how to ride, trying to figure out how to brake good, brake late and brake hard is the name of the game. But when your bikes don't let you brake hard enough, then you end up braking early and slowing down over a long distance, and then just dragging brakes, and it's hard to ride the right way when you're dragging brakes. And here's why. Yeah. When you're hitting a berm, you have to lean the bike over. And in order to lean the bike over, you have to put force into your bike to get it to lay over. Now, if your speed is good, then you're not touching your brakes. If your speed is not good through the turn, then you have to grab a handful of brake. And what happens, and this is just physics, what happens when you grab a handful of brake while you have the bike leaned over is it stands the bike up just like that. Which means you have to put even more force into the bike to get it to lean over. But it is hard to make those micro adjustments in the middle of a berm while you got the bike leaned over, you're feeling good, but you know you're going too fast. So then you tap the brake, stance the bike back up, then you're trying to put more force into the bike to get it to lay over further. And then you lose your line on the berm. And that's how people either go too low on the berm and wash out heavy, or God forbid you go too high and fly off the top of it. That would suck. Don't see that as often as the first one. But that's just one of the many reasons why upgrading your brakes will help you improve as a rider faster. You'll be a better rider. You'll be able to ride faster in general because you'll have more of a comfort level braking late. Well, sorry, I don't mean braking late. What I mean is braking early but braking hard. Braking hard over a short distance as opposed to braking light or medium strength over a long distance. Some other considerable reasons why upgraded brakes can make a huge difference for people is and this isn't always the case, but it was for me, and I know it has been for other people. A lot of times the lever pull is really stiff and firm on some of these lower end brakes. And on the nicer brakes, you have a really light lever. And the reason why that matters is because the more tension you have, the more tension you have in your hands, the more hand and forearm fatigue you're gonna have. Yeah. And the more forearm fatigue you have, whew, the more tired you are in general, and the harder it is to even squeeze your brakes in the first place. So you find yourself getting into some really dicey situations and potentially crashing, all because you have arm pump. Whew. Oh yeah. So yeah, number 2, brakes. Number 3, now this is the fun one. This is the one that everybody wants. This is the one that everybody thinks will let them ride harder, ride faster. And that would be suspension. Now don't get me wrong, suspension is sweet. It does feel good to have some nicer suspension. Maybe it's some bigger stanchions on your fork. Maybe it's a higher volume, beefier shock in the back. But suspension is number 3 because it doesn't actually make you a better rider. Now hear me out. Can it make you faster? Oh. Can it make you faster? Yes. But can it make you faster more than tires and brakes? And if you answer that honestly, the answer is no. It cannot. Give yourself upgraded suspension, but keep your old shitty brakes and keep your light pinch flat prone tires, and tell me you can go faster. When you're dragging brakes because you can't slow down fast enough, and when you're squishing your tires and folding them over in berms because they're not firm enough. So that's why I say suspension is number 3. But now that we got that out of the way, let's talk about why upgrading your suspension is awesome. Enough said. No, but for real, suspension will give you a pretty massive advantage. Oh yeah, in a couple aspects. First and foremost being comfort. What suspension does is it makes riding rough stuff more comfortable. End of story. That's its whole job. And when things are more comfortable, your bike is smoother, it soaks up the bumps more effectively, and in turn that allows you to ride faster. And everybody wants to go faster. Oh yeah. But the combination of all 3 of these is really the sweet spot. Like obviously, right? You get a bike, whatever it is, carbon, aluminum, and you go down that list in that order. Of tires first, brakes second, and suspension third. You have just upgraded your bike into a beast that is probably going to last you in happiness a lot longer than it would have without those upgrades. Just like I said, I think you guys should do. I also did the same thing. I got this bike, I upgraded the tires. Now what did I do? I switched the tires to the Continental Cryptotals, front and rear. They have a front tire and a rear tire, both in downhill casing, as in the thickness of the rubber is a downhill casing, the thickest rubber they make. And initially I did both in super soft, so the softest rubber that they make. Ultimately I ended up switching the rear to just a soft, so a little bit harder of a rubber compound in the rear, because I wanted my back end to slide around in like some of these catch berms and stuff, and the looser stuff a little bit better. But ultimately I went and did exactly what I'm saying that I think you guys should do. I upgraded the tires, then I upgraded my brakes. Now I had codes on these brakes, SRAM codes, and I did not like them. And so eventually I got the money, saved up about 350 bucks, and I got these brakes. And these are the Lewis LH4s. Yeah. Now the Lewis LH4s are fantastic brakes. I'll talk about them more if you guys want me to. Maybe I'll do a whole video about them, but they have an extremely light lever feel. They also have really good adjustments, so you can adjust obviously the lever throw just like any other brake typically can do. You can adjust it out, adjust it in, but on top of that you can adjust the bite point, which really helps you fine-tune this in. Really the gist is that you can fine-tune for whatever your finger length is, whatever your preference is on how close you want it to bite. You can make those adjustments. There is a more expensive version of these brakes that has a third adjustment option, which is, I forget what they call it, but it's basically where you can adjust how the bite feels on your brakes, which is wild. Do you want them to feel like SRAM, where it's lots of modulation and not a very firm bite? Or do you want them to feel like Shimano, where it's a really firm bite and not a lot of modulation? You can actually, on those other upgraded versions of these brakes, which I think are called the Lewis LHTs, you can adjust that as well, which is pretty wild. So, like I was saying, I got the Continental Cryptotol in the stickiest rubber and the thickest casing. So the stickiest rubber and the thickest tire rubber in the front and in the rear. That's what I did first. Next, I upgraded my brakes to something that I have absolutely loved. I took a chance with these brakes, didn't know anything about them really, never knew anyone that rode them, but the Lewis LH4s have been an absolute game changer for me. I can brake harder, faster, I can stop faster, I can trust these brakes to really, really bite hard. And it's made a huge difference for me. You know, chucking it off of stuff in Park City where you got a really sketchy, loose, steep run out, I can trust that these brakes are gonna stop me. Whereas I couldn't on the codes. I noticed that was the biggest difference I noticed right away, was hucking it off of big ploppers into really steep runouts. I was able to slow down a lot faster. Brakes, number 2. Number 3, my fork has stayed the same. I love this RockShox Lyric with the Charger 3 damper. But what I did change and start messing around with was the shock in the rear. So the third thing I did on this bike was I swapped out this shock for a coil. And now, as you can see, I'm back on the shock again. The coil was fun. It was great. It made me faster. In the rough stuff especially, it made me faster. However, I ultimately ended up going back to this shock, but a different version of this shock. So it's the same shock, and I upgraded the air can to a Linear XL air can, which is just a slightly higher volume, larger volume can for the same shock. So like I said, going in that order, I think will pay dividends for you in the end. A couple bonus details about all this and some other things that I might as well just mention while we're here. With the tires, I initially did Cushcore front and rear. I ultimately found that that was too overkill, and it wasn't allowing my tires to flex enough in the hard G-outs and berms. So I took those out, and I like it better. I'm not pinch flatting. I'm not dinging the rim anymore, hardly ever. And so I'm currently running about 23 and 22 in my PSI, and I'm really enjoying it. One thing I do have in here, but I don't feel like it's super necessary, frankly, but it's just a peace of mind thing. I do have a shank insert in here called Rim Saver. And Rim Saver is a plastic liner that goes around the rim and distributes the force of an impact on your rim so that you don't just dent straight through to a rim. I had a really big impact right here. And I think, honestly, if I didn't have the Rim Saver, it would have just pushed that straight down. I would have lost all pressure. I would have had to swap out the wheel. And you know, this looks actually pretty bad, but it's held pressure just fine. And I believe that the Rim Saver distributed this weight so that it affected an area about this wide instead of just affecting an area about this wide. So that's one upgrade I did on my tires, along with the tires themselves. Another upgrade I did on my brakes, along with the brakes themselves, and I did this before I got these brakes, but I do think it's something that you guys would benefit from, is upgrading your rotors. Whether that means upgrading the rotor size, like going from a 180 to a 200 or a 200 to a 220, or also increasing the rotor thickness. Now these rotors are the SRAM HS2 rotors. I've really enjoyed the thicker rotor. Just in general, it's a thicker rotor, so it dissipates heat a little bit better. I did notice that it grabbed harder when I first got these. So upgrading the rotor is another quick little hack to give yourself some better braking performance. Now, the last thing that I would say as a bonus thing that you should honestly do first before all of these, but it's so inexpensive that I didn't want to waste it on number one, is the pedals. You cannot ride a mountain bike comfortably without good contact points. If you don't have good contact on your bike, then you're going to be slipping your feet off, and you're going to be gouging your shins like I did here. And that's going to make you not want to ride your bike anymore. So I think getting good pedals, I mean, when I started mountain biking, the race face Chesters were like the go-to pedal for everyone as they started mountain biking, because they were cheap. They were like 30, 40 bucks or something. They're really just a good pedal. However, there are so many good pedals now, good composite pedals that are under 50 bucks. P&W makes a good composite pedal. One Up makes a really good composite pedal. Crank Brothers, the Stamp ones, are a really good composite pedal. And all of those options of pedals are under 50 bucks. So I would definitely get pedals. And then grips and stuff, those are all just like personal preference. I don't honestly think that those make a huge difference for anyone as far as riding performance. Yes, they are a contact point. But just hold on, just grip it and hold on. So there's my top 3 things in order that I think you should do to upgrade your mountain bike.